Righty, 1, 2, 3. Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to season 2 of the Rich Man's Gym podcast. The way I see it, I'm going to do 1 year of podcast activity will make for a season. Second year of the Rich Man's Gym podcast. Man, we're in year 2 already. Can you believe it? Okay, so season 2. My name is David Bradley, and welcome to the Rich Man's Gym podcast. Check out my blog, richmansgym.com. That is what is inspiring the podcast. It is a personal development podcast that is dedicated to strength and conditioning for body, mind, and spirit. So if you, like me, are looking to level up and tap into your true potential, then you've come to the right place. So thank you so much for being here. Let's get started. And hey, also, before I get started, right? If you are getting value from the podcast, please make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure you like it, throw me some comments, share it out to other people, because if you benefit from it, I promise you somebody else is going to benefit from it too. Now, before we get into the nitty and the gritty, let's make sure we get some bills paid. Let's have a couple of quick words from some of our sponsors, and then we're going to dive into today's topic, which is going to be deep and powerful and forceful. Ooh, foreshadowing. Okay, quick word from our sponsor. See you on the other side. Hey, this is David Bradley with richmansgym.com. A friend of mine recently introduced me to a company whose mission is to help people like us get and stay healthy without having to spend a fortune to do it. They're called Live Good, and right now they are bringing us the most advanced nutritional supplements on the market today. They're made with only the purest, highest quality, results-driven ingredients on the planet, with one exception. There are no expensive pricing markups like we see with other companies. Why should you check them out yourself? Well, let me ask you. Number 1, do you take supplements? 2, have you ever wondered, or are you right now concerned that you might be overpaying for your supplements? If you answered yes to those 2 questions, there is a way for you to get high quality supplements for up to 75% less than what you're probably currently paying. You like that idea? Sound interesting? Then check this out, because at the same time, there is also a way for you to supplement your income by as much as $2,000 a month without having to go out and recruit anybody. Would you like to learn more about that? Of course. So what's the next step? Simple. I need about 6.5 minutes of your undivided attention. Head on over to richmansgym.com/live good tour. That's richmansgym.com/live good tour, where you will learn more about how Live Good is breaking the mold and decide for yourself if it's worth taking a deeper look. So again, for good measure, richmansgym.com/live good tour. richmansgym.com/live good tour. See you there. Meet the MyHigh Infrared Sauna Blanket, the world's most portable infrared sauna. Experience the sauna high from the comfort of your own home, utilizing effective infrared heat to promote a range of health benefits. Calm your mind and body, burn calories, detoxify better and faster. 5 minutes to heat up, 30 to 60 minutes per session, 1 minute to clean. Easily stored in our convenient carry bag. A fraction of the price of a normal sauna. Order yours today at richmansgym.com/myhigh. That's richmansgym.com/myhigh. richmansgym.com/myhigh. Okay, and we're back. Thank you so much for staying through that. We're going to be talking about man, I don't even know what to call this, so I'm just going to get started. Maybe an examination of different levels of consciousness today. So we're going to start off season 2 of the Rich Man's Gym podcast with some depth. We're going to go deep. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read it, but there's a book out there called Power versus Force. And we're going to be looking at power versus force in real life. This is inspired and adapted from the teachings, of 2 people, Wayne Dyer and then David R. Hawkins. So like I mentioned a second ago, this is going to be an examination of different levels of consciousness, but more importantly, how it affects how we see the world. And Wayne Dyer so eloquently stated, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think it goes hand in hand with how we perceive the world that we live in right now. And there's a lot of interesting perceptions going on in the world that we live in right now. What we focus on, we create. What we put attention on is what grows, and your level of consciousness is going to determine what we see, what we focus on, what we create, what we cultivate, and what we're going to experience in our lives. So David R. Hawkins, I mentioned him a second ago, he writes this book called Power versus Force. If you haven't read it, totally recommend it. And if you go to richmansgym.com/power Power versus Force in Real Life, you can find a link so you can buy the book. But the book explores the dynamics of human consciousness, and it does it in a way that so that we as individuals can navigate our personal and collective growth, if that makes any sense. So in the book, he introduces us to a scale of consciousness, and it's a hierarchical model, and it categorizes human emotions and behaviors from really low levels that are associated with force, right? And then things like fear and anger, and then we get into some of the higher levels that are associated with power, such as love and enlightenment. And if you look at other beings and entities that have functioned on this planet incredibly well, you'll notice they're in the power zone. So Hawkins in the book discusses, the transformative effect or impact of when we start embracing these higher levels of consciousness, and we emphasize the power that comes from within that was already there. And it's sustained by positive and life-affirming principles. The book encourages us to transcend limiting beliefs and emotions. So think about some that you might have right now. And if you're looking for some ways to transcend that, I know I am, fostering this greater awareness for yourself and our personal power so that we actually can create this positive change in both our individual lives and the world at large. If you want to change the world, you got to change you first. This book, Power versus Force, and it's deep. It's not an easy read, just be warned. It's had a huge impact on one of my mentors, Wayne Dyer. I mentioned him a second ago. And there's a seminar that he did several years ago that I had the privilege of listening to on Audible called It's Never Crowded on the Extra Mile. Highly recommend it. He references this book several times. And then he delivers this great example towards the end. So you got to stay to the end when you listen to it. He delivers this great example of how our level of consciousness, it influences how we perceive our world. So let me just say that again. Your level of consciousness, my level of consciousness, our level of consciousness will determine how we see the world. Now, there's a midway point here. So you've got this lower force level, then you've got the higher power range. So on the bottom, we have these thoughts that weaken us, literally weaken us. Physically, spiritually, emotionally, they weaken us. And they're based on applying force to the things that we see. And then when we get on this upper half, it contains levels of consciousness that strengthen us, that empower us, that enable us to perform at our peak states. So think about some people on the planet right now that you may aspire to, look to, appreciate. I guarantee you, the deeper you look, the more you'll realize they're in the power zone, not the force zone, even if they can push through some stuff. So I just want to take a moment and see if we can change the way we look at things for the better. This is really going to be power versus force in real life. So the way I want you to start out, and if you're driving right now, maybe pull over, save this for later, or just don't crash. But I'd like you to just, in your imagination for a second, think about a bum, like a homeless guy. He's on a street corner, and it's in kind of a nice neighborhood. And then just see if you can get a clear picture of that. And if you got it, then I'm going to move forward anyway. But this is just a bum. It's on a street corner. He's in a fashionable neighborhood. This is how Wayne Dyer starts it off. This is the scene. This is where we're at. This could be your neighborhood. In any size city, you've got this old man, tattered clothes. He's all alone, leaning against a wall outside a convenience store, sitting on a park bench perhaps. But there he is. Can you see him? Let's explore this a little bit more though. How does he smell? You know what I'm talking about. How does he smell? If you shook his hand, what would his skin feel like? What's he wearing? So I want you to look at him from a perspective of, we're going to look at him together actually, from these different levels of consciousness. You got this guy in your head, right? You got it? Okay, so we're going to look at this person from various levels of consciousness. And I want you to note, we're going to note also some of the differences in how he appears to us as we raise our level of consciousness. This is what Hawkins and Dyer are trying to get us to understand. So we're going to go through this together. So at the bottom of the scale, where the majority of our thoughts are all shame-based. This bum would be dirty, he's disgusting, he's disgraceful. This is how somebody who's got shame-based thinking is going to view this person without casting any judgments on anybody else. Do you know people who think this way? Have you thought this way? Have you ever caught yourself thinking this way at some point, one time or another? So when we start climbing the scale, when we start getting higher and higher, we sort of we move up, which is crazy. So we move out of shame, we move up into this realm of what Hawkins calls just guilt. So we would now start blaming this man for his condition. He deserves what he gets, we might say. We'll assume he's like a lazy welfare cheat, nothing more than an addict with no self-control. And if our thoughts are dominated by despair and hopelessness, then this bum's plight would appear to be desperate. So for us in this state, this would be damning evidence that society can't do anything about the homelessness. This is very relevant right now because there's a huge homeless crisis in the United States, especially in California where I live. So when we move up into grief, the old man looks tragic, look friendless. He's forlorn, right? Go look that word up. I'm not going to define it right now. The scene is pitifully sad. Like, how could this man just be abandoned like this? Doesn't he have family? How lonely must this existence be for him? So then as we continue to raise our consciousness about how we see him, how we perceive him, fear sets in. We might even start seeing him as threatening, a social menace perhaps. We should call the police before he commits some kind of a crime or hurts somebody. The next level of consciousness now is desire, where we look at him again, we're going higher and higher up the rung yet, but we haven't crossed over we're still in force right now. So we're at desire now. We look at him and he might represent for us a frustrating problem. And it is. Why doesn't somebody do something about this situation? How much money have we thrown at the problem with no solution? So let's keep climbing, right? When are we going to get pissed off about it? I'm starting to get pissed off about it. Are you getting pissed off about it? That's the next state. It's anger. This old man looks like he could be violent. Or on the other hand, we might become furious that this even exists. There's no way for a person to live. What the heck? So anger is, interestingly enough, it's a step in the right direction because this has the potential for us to do something, to take action, and hopefully action in the right direction. Now, keep in mind, as I mentioned ago, we're still in these states that weaken us, right? So let me just drop some Yoda on you, right? Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. So we're not strong yet. We're still in weakening mode. Pride comes next. We see this person as an embarrassment. We see this man as an embarrassment. He's lacking self-respect to better himself. Why doesn't he do something about his condition? After pride, though, comes courage. And now we're in that distinction mode that we're between truth and falsehood. We've actually crossed into power now. You get to courage, you've crossed over into power levels. No longer are these weakening things. These are strengthening things. We're getting stronger now. We've been getting stronger the whole time. Every time you climb up, you get a little bit stronger. But it just got a little bit easier. We are now in a position of power rather than force. So when we get to this courage section, we might be motivated to wonder if there's a local homeless shelter for him. Like all this man needs is a job, a place to stay, new clothes, showered up, right? See if we can help him out. We see his potential. The next level is neutrality. From this perspective, the bum looks okay, maybe even interesting. Live and let live, we might say. After all, he's not hurting anybody, right? Where have we heard this before? Have we said it ourselves? Do you know people who've said it? I've seen people make those comments about homeless people. Is it enough, though? So climbing these rungs, the next thing we get to, willingness. There's an answer here. We might decide to go down and see what we can do to help, or maybe cheer this guy up. We want to do something about it. It's not just power now, we're talking action. We might maybe volunteer to shelter or at a local mission or donate some money or some clothes. Maybe it starts with just one day where we volunteer and do something. Thanksgiving. When we find ourselves in a place of acceptance, the man on the corner, remember, we got a bum here, most likely smells dirty, could be disease ridden, but now this guy becomes intriguing to us. I bet he's got a great story. Like, how did he get there? He's where he is for reasons that we may never, ever, ever, ever understand or even be able to comprehend. Now we're getting somewhere. Because the next level is reason. This man, he's also a symptom. He's a symptom of the current economic and social malaise. Perhaps he's a good subject for an in-depth psychological study on mental illness, drug addiction, affordable housing, unemployment, all of that. But isn't he more than that? So while this is progress, there still seems to be something missing. I don't know about you, but I feel like something's missing. Something that is just out of sight. Can we raise our consciousness a little more? And when we do, what might we see? Because when we move to these higher levels, the old man with the rough hands, not only does he begin to look interesting, but maybe friendly and lovable. Perhaps we would then be able to see that he was, in fact, one who has transcended social limits and he's free. Man, this guy doesn't give up. Maybe he's just a joyful old guy with wisdom and wisdom of the ages painted all over his face. And the serenity that comes from an indifference to material things. Now, when we get to this final level, one more level here, the level of peace, P-E-A-C-E, peace, arguably the highest level any of us will ever attain. And from here, this old man, this dirty, smelly bum with rough skin, he is revealed as one's own self in a temporary condition. Let me just say that one more time. When we reach the level of peace, this bum is revealed as one's own self in a temporary condition. That could be you. And that is all that needs to be said about the level of peace. Because when you recognize that that could be you, it changes exactly the way you see things. And the things you look at suddenly change. Do you see the difference? Now, I'm not perfect at this in any way, shape, or form. I'm still working on this, and I got a lot of work to do. But can you see the distinctions between how we look at things? Mother Teresa once said, when asked about all the squalor that she used to see in the streets of Calcutta, she says, "Every day I see Jesus Christ in all of his distressing disguises." Speaking of things I'm still working on. So that's what I'm working on. What do you need to work on here? I mean, so from just a simple image of a bum, can you see yourself? Can you see yourself in that person? Can you see the divine? You don't have to be Christian to understand what kind of a person Jesus was, and can you see him in somebody else? I mean, and if we're all made in that image of the divine, and if we're all infinite beings having a temporary human experience, then what can we do to see the divinity in others? And I think it starts with realizing the divinity within us first. To see and allow a being like Jesus Christ in the distressing disguise that is our own reflection. That is powerful. Now we go on, the work continues though. We need to turn that into a gaze of forgiveness and compassion and unconditional love, not just for ourselves, but for the world. And as we look out at the world, know that what we see is a reflection of what is in our heart. How you see the world is how you see yourself. How you process what you see will weaken or strengthen you, and how we respond will weaken or strengthen us as a society collectively. Like I said, we're going deep on the first one, right? So, man, thank you so much for staying to the end of that thing. The first time I went through that exercise, man, it blew me away. I was out on a ruck, and it just my brain completely exploded. It made me realize how much more work I have to do in this area. I got a lot to do here, And so I want to say thank you for tuning in and for listening. Would love to get your comments and your feedback below. If you like this in writing, again, go head on over to richmansgym.com. You can read through this. Quick reminder to you to subscribe and share. This is Rich Man's Gym, strength and conditioning for body, mind, and spirit. We covered mind and spirit today. Train anywhere. Thanks again. Can't wait to see you on the next episode. Share this out if you loved it. Talk to you soon.